and welcome to The View from the IDB. I'm here with Ramon Aracena, who is the Chief Economist for Latin America of the Institute of International Finance. Ramon, thank you for joining me. So I know you have a very clear point of view on what works and that good policies work. It doesn't matter which countries adopt them, and Brazil and Argentina are good examples perhaps of this.
Well, thank you, Silvia, for having me. It's a pleasure to participate. I think when Latin America is going through another rough year because of changing global conditions, one of the advantage of the region, though, is like policymakers in the region know how to deal with challenges. And our hope is they're going to deal with this challenge in the way that it should be done. So that basically it's gonna make the region stronger rather than kill the region.
Okay, and so we were having a quick conversation earlier before recording, and you pointed out how once more orthodox policies were introduced in Brazil and Argentina, things started improving, of course, bearing in mind some adjustments. But do you think that this is sustainable and that these policies will remain in place in the years ahead?
Well, that's the challenge of the politician and the policymaker is to, the job of the policymaker is not to show up in the news, that everybody look at him like he's a really nice guy. No, the job of the policymaker is to stabilize, to have a very stable condition in order to attract investment to their country, in order to create the condition for strong and sustainable economic growth. And the only way you're going to have that one is when the private sector get involved. And in order to attract the private sector, you have to provide certainty. You have to provide, especially when you have, let's call shock coming from abroad. There it shows really your character, what kind of country you are. If you panic and try to respond with short-term policies which are populist and basically they're going to mitigate the pain in the short term, but it's basically they're going to exacerbate the problem in the medium term. That's not the way that I will really grant a premium to that policymaker in terms like they're doing a good job. It's that one who tell the citizen, look, we had a problem here. See, politicians and policymakers have the tendency to believe that the average citizen is not smart. Normal people, poor people are smart. But you have to explain them in their language what they're doing and why you are doing it. You start talking, in economics language, they're not going to understand macroeconomic, fiscal. No. You got to explain and look at this is similar to what will happen in Europe, and that's the way we have to adjust, and that's the way we're going to come out better, within a year.
And so over the past year, both Argentina and Brazil started a discussion, a more open discussion perhaps, with the private sector, which has worked. And also that compares to what other countries in the region have been doing for some time. For example, Chile and other countries part of the Pacific Alliance. And there is some talk now taking place, envisaging the possibility of the Mercosur countries, so Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, joining maybe even the Pacific Alliance countries, so Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Mexico. I mean, what's your view on this?
Yeah, look, 2 years ago, Brazil and Argentina were in the midst of major recessions, and the only reason that those countries were in recession were because mishandled the economics. They rely heavily, on fiscal spending, and they ran out of resources. They create distortion in the economy, and so the private sector got spooked. So, well, I don't want to go there. And then when you lose the confidence in the private sector, it's really hard to recover it. It's like trust in this business is the main asset.
But do you see a future, near future, perhaps, when the Mercosur countries and the Pacific Alliance countries could come together in a sort of trade pact?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. And then now you had those countries, for different reasons, Brazil realized if they don't change policy course, basically the economy was going to remain stagnation for a really long time. They said that we had to fix this problem, and they started, they implemented, fiscal policy to introduce fiscal consolidation. They put in place, a cap on primary spending for the next 20 years in real primary spending. So they're basically sending a strong signal to the market. We are serious for next 20 years, not just for a couple of years. And they're passing reform, and they're going to have to pass out social security reform that everybody has been expecting. The quality of the economic thing had changed for the best. So you had the confidence is back. And then you had the inflation start coming down, and then you had the central bank with the scope of the range to reduce interest rate. Brazil is, when everybody's increasing interest rates and because there is volatility, Brazil had the capacity to cut interest rate in a massive fashion, and that's which is going to drive economic growth next year.
Okay. But because we are running out of time, just tell me this. So do you see a future where the Pacific Alliance countries and the Mercosur countries could come together in a trade deal? Is it a possibility?
In the future, everything is a possibility. But I'm going to tell you something. Yes. The Pacific Alliance and the Mercosur, they're different animals. One is a horse who, he's designed for a race, very competitive race, and the other is not very competitive. It's just in order for the Mercosur to join the Pacific Alliance, the Mercosur will have to. Let me explain you what Mercosur is first. Mercosur is a customs union. Yes. Customs union, the thing that they do is to eliminate trade barriers among themselves, but the erect barriers against the rest of the world. The Pacific Alliance is much more competitive because they eliminate trade barriers among themselves and against the rest of the world. So
still, they're not exactly. Obviously, the same animal.
If you wanna join that, probably the government of Mercosur, they're gonna have to give up the principle of having a customs union and the protects on a specific sector like production of the cars or vehicles, all things, because that's not in the philosophy of the Pacific Alliance bloc. The Pacific Alliance bloc want the good car coming from Germany, Sweden, and whatever, and Japan. And the Argentine and the other one, they are happy with whatever they produce.
So it is a possibility, but perhaps not a short-term one. We may have to wait a little bit longer to see that.
Somebody's going to have to give up in their policy objective. Somebody's going to have to say, okay, it's not going to be a customs union anymore. We want to be a trade bloc, a free trade bloc like the Pacific Alliance, and somebody has to adopt the principle of the other. And I don't see the Pacific Alliance doing that, trying to become a Mercosur member. I see it is better in the reverse.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your comments as always, Ramon.
Well, thank you for having me.